While he's in there, can you get those? Who's the guy in X-Men with the things that shoots out his fingers?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Is that an option?
Yeah, we're going to add that.
Yeah, not covered by your healthcare provider.
No, that's optional.
Available.
Welcome to an all-new episode of Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. This podcast explores leadership traits under stress with a special guest each week. We use a simple and accurate OAD assessment to identify key personality traits, or superpowers, as well as the shadow side, Kryptonite traits that appear when we're under stress. As always, we'll have some pod banter, shameless plugging, and we'll even let our guests talk for a bit. Of course, no humble brags. Welcome to the show.
Okay, in 3, in 2, in 1. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome to Work in Progress with John Lane and Will Barfield. Very nice to be here. Will, what do you notice?
That you handle your intro differently.
I'm trying. I'm working on it. I'm trying to have a crescendo of energy instead of blowing it all to start. Will is taking a mental note. Write down the word crescendo. Look it up later.
Yes, and how to spell it also.
Yeah, I can help you with that.
I think there's a minor in there.
Well, let's start as we always do. Let's talk about some banter. I guess my banter and my bloopers are kind of the same, so I'm gonna hold the banter to the blooper segment. But I will say, as far as our banter, that James is, even though he's guest 26, and we did try to get him on sooner, he's OG with us because James is one of the first person to agree to get involved with our soon-to-be-released SDR study,
yes,
which we've been saying free beer tomorrow for quite a while.
Yeah, James was an early adopter in that and provided a lot of support and headcount to help us with that study. And I know that white paper is ongoing, but looking forward to releasing that at some point this year.
Yeah, Philip said it'll be out tomorrow.
Yeah, same time as the free beer.
It's the free beer. Yeah. You got any
For context, for new audience members, for our WIPsters who aren't familiar with this, one of the things that we can do with our OAD tool is study certain types of similar, employee profiles, and if you get enough people that are of the same job, like a customer service rep or a sales development rep, to complete an OAD study, once you get, I think it's 254 profiles, then it's statistically accurate, and the results can be, distilled down to something that's publishable. So we're looking forward to this study coming out later this year.
So thank you for that help. So let's, Will, do you have any banter, or are you unprepared as usual?
No, I usually rely on you for the banter, and you usually have a couple things that you throw in.
Happy surgery day tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. So when this episode airs, I will have already had the surgery on my.
That is true. That is true. And you're going to be in one of those thingies for a while. Yeah,
there's gonna. I think they called it a splint, but I believe it's gonna be one of those like robo arm looking black things with dials on it and stuff.
Yeah. You can keep snacks in that though. That's kind of the upside.
That was my plan. That and a flask.
All right, let us get going. I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield.
And we are a work in progress. Now watch this. We're going to invite James. This is where the new software really sparkles. Ready?
Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
This is with their recent upgrade?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice. Thank you. Still don't have a pointer, but we're getting close. James, welcome to the pod. In a couple of minutes, we're going to get into whether we can call you Jimmy or not. We prefer that, but we'll stick with James for now. Why don't you tell the good people watching at home a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a story about the Jimmy thing. I am James. I am currently, I work for Bandwidth. I have the pleasure of leading the sales development organization there. I've been working in sales development. I kind of fell into it in 2014. So getting close to my 10-year mark of really focus on nothing but that middle of the funnel operation. Started with everything from e-commerce to um, performance management to facilities management software, all focused around pipeline generation and really helping develop large sales development teams to do the best that they can and progress their careers. Been a big focus of mine.
Interesting. So you and your team, I assume, are a resource for the frontline sellers, including training and product stuff and all the things they need to know to be effective at their job. You put that together for them.
I have a team of SDRs. I have 6 amazing managers that work with me now, who lead their direct teams, and we're responsible for all the training, the resources, doing that with some amazing support from our enablement team and our learning and development teams, as well as our people services teams. So we have a good amount of system support to really help develop. Anywhere from, depending on where head count's at, anywhere from 45 or to 50 different SDRs, and then helping them move to the next role. So they'll then move to account executive roles or account management roles, or some are moving into operations and have interest in marketing and different places within their organization.
And is it fair to say, James, these are top of funnel people, right? So
yeah,
phone, email, other types of messaging, their job is to get a prospect interested, willing to speak to a sales rep, book a demo. And are they out at book a demo phase? Is that when they disengage?
So for most of the companies I've worked with, I don't take SDRs to book a demo because it's a much more more complex sales cycle. So usually what we'll do is, but to your point, yes, we're the ones on the phone making cold calls, sending emails. I call it the sales engagement part of the sales process, where they're reaching out, building relationships, building rapport, learning about the prospects that they're speaking to, and helping identify whether or not our solution can bring value in their particular role or company, and then from there aligning those value points to and introducing them to an account executive or a sales engineer who could then take them further through the sales cycle.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that. Will, we could use a little of that.
Yeah, really.
You want a side hustle, James?
Yeah, if you want to build out like a 60-person global SDR team, that's really right in my wheelhouse. So,
well, John, you're going to have to find a sponsor for that.
That's true.
To fund it.
True. That might be.
We'll get back to you on that, James.
That one might be tough. All right. Well, let's dig in. So, folks who watch, listen, however they engage with us, know that this podcast covers leadership traits under straits. Wait, take 2. We only do one take, James, but I just say that anyway. Everyone knows that this podcast talks about leadership traits under stress.
Yes.
Nailed it. Mm-hmm. And the way we arrive at those leadership traits is we use the OAD survey. Well, tell us a little bit about the OAD survey.
So it is a very fast, very simple, and incredibly accurate assessment tool that really takes word association and helps to model a profile of a person and their traits based off of their answers on 2 different pages on a website, where they kind of identify themselves with adjectives that they prefer that relate to who they are as a person, and then how they feel they have to interact in their job.
Wow, you've been paying attention.
Yes, although I'm often accused of not. That is the case, yes.
That's beautiful. So then we take those leadership traits, we cleverly gave them new names, called them Superpowers and Kryptonite, and a podcast was born. So that's how the show works. So as we get into this, we'll just we'll remind our viewers of our leadership style matrix, and we'll point out that James is a socially oriented specialist, so he is in the expert quadrant. That means he don't take no bull. So we're going to have to up our game, Will.
Yeah, and yeah, we have not had that many technically oriented
No,
specialists on here. This is
no.
great to have another expert. Very interesting, and I'm going to dig into this some
Yes.
to have that expert profile end up in a sales and sales leadership career. It's aberrant as compared to most people who go through this process and end up in the upper right quadrant. He's ended up in the exact opposite lower
Yeah.
left.
Exactly. So let's review this. So the things we really concern ourselves with on the pod are the four primary constructs: assertiveness, extroversion, patience, and detail orientation. So Jane, and this is such a beautifully symmetric pattern or trait pattern. So your two dominant traits, which are stacked and therefore of equal value, are assertiveness and detail orientation. So that means you are an expert and you're not afraid to tell people that you are an expert. Your lower E means you're more technically oriented than socially oriented. Doesn't mean you don't like a good time. It's just your communication style is going to be pretty more straightforward. Maybe something like put that in a spreadsheet and send it over to me, type of thing. But you also operate with a level of patience, with a level of urgency. Excuse me. And so you're not waiting around for perfection. You want things done fairly quickly. Well, what did I forget here?
That's well handled. And one of the things that you like to talk about, John, when you are speaking about people who are more in this quadrant, is that they care more about how things get done, as opposed to the fact that things just get done. And I will say, James is in a career where the data matters a lot, and the metrics matter a lot, and the tracking matters a lot. And so for him, yes, send me the spreadsheet. Let me look at the data. He's going to care not just that the call occurred and an appointment was set. He wants to know how. How many calls did it take to get that done? What's our show rate? How many? What's the likelihood that this will actually occur? And such and such.
James, does that describe you?
Yeah, no, it's honestly to a T. I mean, even if you send me the spreadsheet, like I dive into the formulas and I make sure the formulas are right and how they're calculated, and I don't just like to see the summary tables. I want to see the underlying data that made up that, so I can go in line by line and spot check to make sure it's accurate, because everything I do is compounded, So if we make a decision for a process and then that is then compounded out across 40, 50, different people doing a job, I really take their success important. And if I make a mistake in the data, I set a certain conversion rate, and then that could set up 30, 40 people, for failure. So it's really important to me make sure it is accurate and it is done.
Great. And then I remember when we reviewed this many moons ago, I think you were not only, I want to say amazed, I say impressed with the accuracy, but also how easy it was to take.
Yeah, I've done almost all of these personality traits, and I think it's kind of the same things. A lot of times when I do them, people are really interested on my results and the kind of where they fall. But this one was easy. It was just super simple. It was very. I didn't have to really think about the answers. I was just able to just go in and answer it. And
we don't want you thinking too much, because then social
right.
desirability tries to rear its ugly head, and people start thinking, well, what do they want me to answer? And they don't want anybody to answer in a certain way. They want to know who you are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you for that. Let's dig in a little bit. So, Will, I think this is where, after 26 shows, I think I can stop saying I think this is where you come in. I'm pretty darn sure this is where you come in.
As am I, even though I'm not an expert on the
True.
quadrant.
True.
I know when it's my time. Thank you, John. We're not going to spend a ton of effort here. We're going to kind of skim this, James, but these are the generic qualities that come out superpowers, kryptonite, for someone who lands in this expert, technical specialist block, lower left for OAD terminology. Of those superpowers, as you see them listed there, is there one that you people note about you, or you agree with most about yourself? Anything that stands out there as a superpower that's definitely one of James's leading strengths?
I mean, yeah, I would definitely say that the strong with detail and follow through. I mean, I am a very loyal person. Loyalty is very big for me. I wanted people to trust me to get it done and get it done right and get it done fast. So that's been one of the things that really I've taken pride in that as a superpower. Knowing that people can count on me.
Nice.
Right. And Sarah Glover, credit to her for the shadow side terminology. We love to talk about how when stress is high, pressure is on, things are difficult, challenging, and our superpowers invert, become our kryptonite. Is there one of those factors or features there in the kryptonite column that you notice most, or have come out, in the past when you've been managed or been managing others, that it can be a weakness when the heat is on?
Yeah, the brisk and abrupt. I've gotten that before, where, especially with the experience I have, I'll so you'll start to ask me a question. I already know the answer, and I just, like, when the heat is on, sometimes I'll get really quick. I actually just recently, a couple months ago, apologized to my team and like let them know that this is a challenge of mine.
Mhm.
That I had started leaning into that and doing that a little bit more, and that's something that I have to be very, very conscious of, to make sure that I can still work with that urgency, but then also have people that are willing to be right there working with me.
I love that. Something Will and I have been talking about is, especially in group settings, we call it the context before content. So there's a lot of times when people argue or they can't get an alignment. It's not that they disagree with the underlying premise or whatever they're talking about. It's that someone got triggered by the way the other person brought up a subject, and now they're like nose to nose in some fashion, whether it's emails or Slack or in the same room, and they haven't even gotten to the issue at hand. So they're stuck on context before they get to content. And I think that how we all communicate and consume information super powerful in any organization, and that's what we specialize in.
Okay, James, you, Mr. Analysis, analyzed your results and elected to make some notes, with your own thoughts on both your superpowers and your kryptonite. In the superpowers section, why did you choose to, pen these particular
Mm.
bullets? Let's talk through it.
Yeah. So, it's like when you look at my results, it's the overarching kind of theme was like, oh, I get it. This guy's kind of and I can be that way. So I have to lean into my strengths and make sure that I'm leveraging those, because I mean my kryptonites are my strengths are usually internal in that introvert side of me, but my kryptonite is very external. It affects others.
Right.
So I have to really lean in and actually find a way to have my strengths affect others, right? So I really want to call out, like, success for me is when others are successful, right? So I have an ethos behind why I do what I do, right? And I keep, like, I never focus on my number, my compensation number, because I know if every single SDR, every single individual contributor, every single manager hits their number, my number will take care of itself. So my focus, my attention, my analytical strengths, anything that I'm doing and trying to make decisions, I'm making to help them be successful. And if I do that, it'll take care of my own, right? And if not, then I would just be this person that just sat around and like just think through. So you wouldn't want to go talk to, right? So I have to make sure that I'm able to express my strengths externally and not just allow them to be kind of internal strengths if you just saw my work directly or vice versa, because usually people with like my personality type would end up like an engineer somewhere, who's like just banging out code, right? And and I'm in sales and I'm dealing with people every single day.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest things. Then and also my it's my ability to process switch, right? To be able to like set a topic aside and then pick up another one. That really did me well throughout COVID times, right? So when it was amazing how all of a sudden, when all you had to do was a click away from the next meeting, like you were back to back to back meetings
all day long.
But it allows me to be part and to be contributors in as a stakeholder in a lot of different top things that are going on. Again, to improve processes, to help my team be successful, to remove clicks. Sometimes I'm doing something to remove the amount of clicks an SDR has to make in a day in order to do a task, because that could be 2 hours of additional frustration for them when they're dealing with a job that's already frustrating, making cold calls, and they're having to put themselves out there. It allows me to be able to process what should go to meeting and be able to be a contributor for everything from payroll to operations to data analysis to back to like person to person coaching and personalities.
Well, and for those viewers and listeners who aren't aware of this, James and I have a personal connection in history. I'm going to speak to his success when others are successful. Comment here before we go to the Kryptonite slide. I've witnessed that in my professional interactions with James, not only in his loyalty to me when I have helped him as a recruiter with he is my candidate in placing him in a position, but then turning around and coming back to me for help hiring for his team once he was ready to gear up. For him, it wasn't just enough to utilize me to find the job. He wanted to pay me back with some opportunity for success with that loyalty by bringing me in. Yeah. I can also say that there are people who have been candidates in my pipeline that I know have followed James from one position to another company. They may have parted ways for a little bit and come back, but the people that have been successful in their career that have worked for James try to find James again because he lives and breathes that first bullet of success for him, being when others are successful, whether it's his friends, business partners, or people he's managed before following him to his next destination.
I love that. All right.
Enough happiness.
Let's destroy him.
All pain and misery.
Bring in the pain.
Yeah, time to cry. So, Kryptonite, James, you mentioned, I love the comment that you made, and I hope we distill that, save that somehow, John, about the
which should I have been recording? Should I have been recording?
Probably. Maybe touch the button now. Superpowers being more hidden and the Kryptonite being more, obvious, right? Introvert versus it's very, clear that I convey those Kryptonites when the pressure is on. I can be brusque. I can be abrupt. Talk to us, the audience, about these three things that you wrote down as Kryptonite factors that leapt out at you when you analyze your results.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it kind of goes back to that big theme, right? It's like some people just like stand there with their S in the chest, and they're like, it's like they look bulletproof, and they look underneath, and you all the problems. For me, most of the things that are my Kryptonite are very outward. So, like, for me, like I always work with a sense of urgency, right? And you can say like, well, isn't that kind of a strength? It's like, well, but because I do that, I put undue pressure on others that they have to work at the same pace and urgency, and for me, urgency and pressure are two different things. So I'm always working with a sense of urgency. I'm always looking to like, we should do it now if it can be done now. Yeah. And that's not necessarily the way others work, and they feel pressured to work the same way I work. And that's something that I've been very conscious of, knowing that it's a problem. I try to be to actually like mitigate that as much as I can. But I still know what happens, right? So there's grace that I give because I know that this happens, or especially people who work really close with me.
Yeah, and I'll just say that folks that have in OAD parlance higher P than A, so more patience relative to their assertiveness, are people who are in many ways processors or system people, and getting work out of them faster by ramping up the pressure is a recipe for anxiety and failure. And so transferring that from you to them is a skill as opposed to like a 2x4. So learning that and being conscious of that about yourself, especially as the month or the quarter or the year is coming to a close, your anxiety is going to drive your urgency. But if you let that spill into your team as kryptonite, then that's going to spill into them, and it's not going to be in the service of anyone.
Exactly. And that's some of the biggest things that I deal with, right? And it kind of ties into my next topic, which is like painting a picture of what done looks like. I work with a great CRO who, shared with me and was vulnerable enough to share like this is something they're working with their executive coach of getting better at that. And I was like, never even really thought of the concept, but like with a team the size that I have, I can see on the inside of my brain like exactly what I want it to look like. But I have trouble sometimes getting that out because we're so detached from it, right? Like there's so many dominoes that have to fall for other people to be able to see what I'm seeing. But I have trouble actually because I'm looking that far ahead and because I'm working it that way. Sometimes I have trouble, getting people not getting people, but getting them to share my vision, right? And getting to be as passionate as I am about it because, I've worked with some great people, as Will said, I have a few people that have worked with me at multiple companies, and, I just had a conversation with one of my amazing managers and she said, I don't see it, but I trust you. And I'm like, I'm so glad I have that. But at the same time, like I do need to get better at having them see it, right? And see what we're trying to do and how this is going to affect things long term. Because sometimes it's very, very small things like I talked about earlier, just removing clicks, right? Just removing clicks in a day can increase efficiencies. If you remember like way back in the day where it was like, oh, this airline saved millions of dollars by adding one less tomato to the salads, right?
I love that. No, they took the lettuce off the sandwich because they noticed that the lettuce was always being thrown out. So it saved them millions of dollars a year. I don't know why people are so anti-lettuce, but it was a good insight, and they just discovered a way to put millions of dollars into other budgets or just save money.
Yeah, and that's a drastic version of it. But if I can increase efficiencies by 10% across 60 people across the year, right, that actually effectively gave me the productivity of 2 more headcount, right? While at the same time taking a job that's extremely stressful and allowing them to have a little less stress, even at 5 more minutes of just like banter time to break the monotony and to break the stress in their day, goes a long way.
Agreed.
Yeah. Before we leave the slide and move forward, the fear of letting others down. I want to ask a question related to that so that you can expound on it, and then we'll move on. You're looking at the numbers closely. It's not your first rodeo. You've been around the ring several times. They're either in current role or in past roles. You've been able to look at the numbers and be able to tell whether you're going to hit your goal or not, right? For the quarter, for the half, for the year, what have you. When you're staring down the barrel of knowing that it's probably unlikely that you are going to meet whatever expectation is that you've set for your leader or for the board or for the investors or what have you, that how does that fear of letting down creep into that situation? How does James cope with that? Can you give us an example here? You talk about your chief revenue officer, sharing a moment of vulnerability with you. This show
Yeah.
is all about that,
Yeah.
right? Like how has that been a negative thing where that fear impacted something, a relationship or performance in some way, and how do you
Good
guard
question.
against that?
Yeah. So there's a few things there. Like, for me, I always work with a sense of urgency, but I also have to tell people that, like, especially that are, again, working with me, that, you know, what is it? So, slow is smooth and smooth is fast, right? We are working with a sense of urgency, but we're not skipping steps. We're doing this. We're taking the time to figure it out and figure it out right, right? We're not procrastinating, right? But at the same time, we're going to make sure we do this right, and we're going to do it one time. And I do that because, you know, in times that I have to let people, like, I let people down, whether it be missing a number. Honestly, usually I can call that out ahead of time and prepare people that this might happen. But it's more of like, again, because I can be abrupt, and because I, like, a lot of these decisions that rest on me, I want to make sure that I don't let people down. I want to make sure, and sometimes that, and going through this and analyzing, I see the solution, right? But it's like risky, and
Mhm.
people are going to think I'm crazy, and but what if I'm wrong? And the that's the one time procrastination kicks in, and it almost cripples me a little bit, where it's just kind of like, like, I know we need to course correct, but like, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
I'm going to have people do things that they're not going to think it works. Like, one of the things that I do, most SCR teams, they'll grant people for a month or 3 weeks, where they go through and train them on thing, these extensive onboarding programs. And I don't do that. I get people on the phones on the Friday of the first week, right? And I take a learn, apply, learn, apply. So
Mhm.
instead of doing a 30-day onboarding, I do a 90-day onboarding, but they're dialing in week one. And they learn a concept in the morning and they apply it that afternoon. And
I like
people thought I
that.
was crazy, for like, oh, you can't, like, they don't know enough. They're going to say the wrong things on the phone. They're going to this, they're going to that. And I had to ruffle some feathers on that, but it took me longer to roll that out than it should have, because I was like, what if I let people down? What if they're right? What if this screws up? And, what if I put these people on the phone, just the ramps, and then they end up failing? And then now, again, going back to my success is other success, then that counteracts that, right?
Mhm.
So this is really just the opposite side of the coin to the superpower, which is that I other success is where I find my success. But at the same time, sometimes I can get, a crippling fear of letting them down and not delivering on that.
Love that. Super honest.
Leadership lessons applied. Thank you for the transition, John. And that's a great example that you gave there, James, right? Because you can have someone who is an all-star at practice, just
Mm.
can practice their tail off, and it looks amazing. And then the whistle blows and it's their turn to run into the game. And, they're back on the bench after 2 plays because, they weren't ready to deliver. You're going ahead and giving them ammunition in the first week to start firing so that they're ready for the game, as opposed to being an all-star at practice
Mm.
who, hasn't shown it on the court. That's a leadership lesson that you applied there. But as we look at the OAD results, Superpowers, Kryptonite, and this analysis, because we know you love to analyze that you went through to prepare for the show, but now on the show, what did you, maybe it wasn't all new, maybe there was a little bit of
Mm.
new and then a bunch of kind of, reminder and refresher, but what can you do with the information that you just digested and that we went through in this program to apply that to what you're doing, yourself, the way you lead you, and the way that you lead others?
So I would love to say that some of this was like, wow, I didn't know that about myself. I can do something about it, right? But, I mean, in the back of my head, I've always known. Part of the reason I've taken so many, very similar, and more complex, like, confusing versions. That's why I like this process, right? Where it was able to really just kind of like me in the face with like, hey, this is you, take it or leave it, right?
Mhm.
And but I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that, you know, I've gotten feedback like you could be abrupt, you could be, all this other stuff in the past. And I've really worked hard to change that about myself. And what I found is I didn't change it because it is who I am. What
Mm.
I've done is I've found a way to effectively work with my personality to help to be able to work with others. Like, I'm not, right? I'm not analytical. I'm not going to do these things. I
Right.
just do it in ways and balance it so it's not so much in people's faces, right? And I think that's one of the things is like all the work that I've done hadn't been to change who I am. It didn't change my personality. It's who I am. But the work I've done over time has allowed me to basically work more effectively with others and turn some of my things that people could definitely take as positives, or sorry, negatives, and have them be positive, right? To reassure them my motivations, and why I'm so diligent, why I'm breaking their Salesforce report in half and like redo.
Mm.
Like if they send it to me, I'm going to recreate it on my own. It's like it's not that I don't trust you. It's just I want to have a better understanding so that I can help. And if I build it and I can get the same number, then we're on the same page. And I have to explain that to people to make sure. And I have to learn to work with myself and the personality around a sea of other people that are in the top. I'm mirrored, so the top right quadrant, right, who are completely different than the way I am, but we're in this. We're
Yeah.
I hope that makes sense, right? It's not about
It does.
me different or me learning something. It's more about reassuring that myself is like, this is me, but over time I've learned to be able to turn these into positives, or at least not make sure that they're not detractors to other people.
No, and I'll put a point on that real fast, James. You've reported to leaders before,
Mhm.
I would guess, who probably lack that degree of self-recognition
Mm.
and are not interested in the mirror and what they see there. They're just good with what you see is what you get. And you can talk to them till they're blue in the face, till you're blue in the face about your point, and they're right before the conversation started. To your credit, the reason why you've been a successful leader and continue to advance in your career and have others follow you is because you were, before you even went through this assessment, you were already knowledgeable of those things that were your strengths and weaknesses, and were working on your superpowers and kryptonite to be a better leader. And this just reinforced the knowledge you already had of yourself. But kudos to you for already being in a place where you are applying those leadership lessons, as opposed to those that we've all worked for. John grunted as well, who you knew there was no way in the world that they were ever going to step in anyone else's shoes and look at themselves and try to be better.
Yeah, absolutely. I knew, and one thing I love about the results from this is that I it doesn't sugarcoat it. This what it is. Your strengths are strong, your weakness, and it's like it's very objective, right? And it's not, you know, like I said, sugar coated. And when I read that, like, and this is what I really learned from this particular exercise, is like,
Mm.
if I sent this out to people, if they wanted to work with me, like, would they just on these results, say sign up for like, yeah, I'm gonna go work
Sure.
with James,
Well, they know
right?
what they were getting. They know what they were getting. I also
Yeah.
think you,
So
James, the signal would be that you are somebody who is self-aware. You are somebody who will look in the mirror. And I'm going to play my executive producer role here and say, we could talk forever. Who's next?
So Nick Trueman, I think, he is a leader that I've worked with. He started off as an SDR. He's a phenomenal individual. Very, very different from me, and we had always been collaborative. So I think Nick Trueman would be great
Great.
for this.
Will,
You
do you
think
know
he'd
Nick?
enjoy the process?
Oh,
All right, great. Well, after we wrap up here, we'll ask you for an introduction. Nick, We're coming at you. Appreciate it.
You're next.
What a show, James. It took us way too long to get you on. We appreciate it. Super thoughtful. I got some great quotes. I can't wait to edit this and put it out for everybody to see. I'm John Lane.
I am Will Barfield.
We are
A work in
a work in
progress.
progress.
Thank you, James. It was a
Thank you,
blast.
sir.
Good to see you,
Thank
buddy.
you.
Work in Progress is a podcast presentation of Slipshod Productions. Available on LinkedIn and YouTube. Executive produced and starring John Lane and Will Barfield. Talent booking, production, and editing by John Lane. Thanks for watching. See you next week.